And welcome back to the second to last episode in the 20 Strongest Shinigami series. Gee, next week is Yamamoto. Spoilers, obviously. What will I do with myself? I'll find other things to do. I've actually already thought of other things to do. Trust me, I've been with both the Zanpakuto and the Captain Class Shinigami videos wrapping up both next week. I need to now find something to occupy my Sundays. But yeah, so coming in at the number 2 spot, in my opinion, for the second strongest Captain Class Shinigami is Ichibē Hyōsube. What was his last name again? Hold on a second. I didn't actually get his last name. Ichibē Hyōsube. Ichibē Hyōsube. And look, when it came to figuring out between the two of them, who was the strongest, Yamamoto or Ichibē, I really had to think of, if these two met in a fight, what would go down. Now, normally I've been starting with the first division, like the two kind of general strongest, Ichibē and Yamamoto, and then going down the list. I'm going to save Yamamoto for last in this video for obvious reasons, because he's the one who obviously beats Ichibē in a fight. So he's the one that we're really going to spend the most time talking about. But Ichibē is a member, and not just a member, but the leader of the Zero Division, being the monk who calls the true name, being probably one of the, if not maybe the oldest Shinigami there is. He's a progenitor Shinigami. He gave everything in the Soul Society the names they have. And the whole concept of names have power is kind of his deal. And it's very important, because that is, he can literally see something and know what its name is. He can look at a Zanpakuto, even though Zanpakutos were, the other guy's specialty. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. I always forget his name. But even though the Zanpakutos were his specialty, he can look at a Zanpakuto and immediately know the name of that Zanpakuto, its true name. That's how he was able to basically tell Renji what Soho Zabimaru's Bankai was. Furthermore, he is extreme. His Shumpo is top notch. His physical abilities in fighting is top notch. He is built. This guy is jacked. He doesn't look it, but he is muscular as all hell. Knowing pretty well every Kido there is, plus many secret Kidos. Able of summoning energy limbs, capable of drawing seals with his Zanpakuto. His Zanpakuto, even before being released, can cut names in half. Basically, what that means is when it hit Yuak's arm, his arms or arms, they were no longer arms, they were R. He took the M and the S off, which literally cut the power of his arms in half. If it were to clash with the sword, it's no longer a sword, it's a sword. It'd be an ord or sword, or sword, a swore. Point being, it'd be an ord. If it clashed with a Zanpakuto, which isn't a sword, a Zanpakuto has a given name. You cut that name in half, you take half that sword's power away. And it makes possibly going into Bankai impossible. And then if you were to be sprayed with the ink of Ichimonji, you lose your name. You lose all the power that name gave you. And then his Bankai, Shirafude Ichimonji, can instill any new name upon any target that's been afflicted by his ink. He literally turned Yuak, pretty much the most godlike individual we had seen in Bleach, into a black ant. Like, he didn't literally physically transform to a black ant, but he had all the powers of a black ant. And if it wasn't for the Almighty, Yuak would have lost. Ichibē claims his power is all the black in the world, all the black in the universe. As long as the black exists, you can't take his power away, because that's where his power comes from. Ichimonji has another ability as well to it, that we don't actually see the ability of this, or the power of this ability, though, but it is implied what this ability does. Futen Tatsatsuryo. Or Slaughterous Mausoleum of Halted Reincarnation. He brings forth a massive amount of blackness from his surroundings, fills a cup with it for drinking from the cup, and chanting an incantation. He creates a large mausoleum with a fence in front of it, top of it, and gravestones in the blackness. The technique takes away all the darkness of his opponent, including from their flesh, bones, and blood, until nothing is left. Destruction is so absolute they will never be reincarnated. Essentially, it is an absolute destruction technique, shredding you and obliterating you down to your very ability, or to your very bone. Like, that is just messed up to no degree. Like, what on earth? So let's get the lieutenants out of the way with Ichimonji, because none of the lieutenants would be would even come close. At this point, besides Yamamoto, it's not about saying who would beat Ichimonji. It's about saying who would fare the best against Ichimonji. So with the lieutenants, Renji would not be able to handle Ichimonji. Just without even releasing his Zanpakuto, he could cut Zabimaru's name in half. Cut any of these Zanpakuto's names in half. So there's a severe problem there. But let's assume that Renji is able to avoid that on some level. The minute that the ink gets on anything, he's done. He can't beat Ichimonji in terms of spiritual pressure. He can't beat him in terms of technique, Kido, swordsmanship. No, it's just he can't beat him. He can't beat him at all. Then you get into Kaku, who's even in a worse spot than Renji. Oh my god, Kaku will get his teeth kicked in by this guy. Ooh, gas pain. Oh, sorry. I stalled for a second. I had a sharp gas. You ever get that, like, you got a burp coming or something like that, and then you got that pocket of air that just hits you on the side. It's like sharp pain. That's what I just had. But yeah, Ikaku, because he is unlike Renji, who at least has one Kido-based technique with his Bankai. Ikaku, and at least knows some Kido, though he's just not that great at it. Ikaku is all physical attack and no real power behind it. Like, even Daiguren Hozukimaru, it's not Daiguren, that's Hyorimaru. What's Ikaku's Bangai's name again? What's that here? Ikaku. What was your Zanpakuto's Bankai name again? Oh, Ryuman Hizukimaru. Ryuman Hizukimaru. It's just physical power and he doesn't even really know Shunpo as far as we could tell that well. He probably does, because at this point, even Kenpachi knows Shunpo. So he probably does know Shunpo, but there's no way he could keep up with Ichimonji, or Ichibē. So there you go. That doesn't work out to his favor. And then you have Kensei. Not Kensei. Shuhei. Shuhei is definitely probably stands the best shot among the lieutenants, but he's still nothing compared to him. Kagashine is tricky, certainly, and its ability to heal him is very useful. And Shuhei is also a very careful fighter, so he probably would have been able to avoid Ichibē for a little bit. Not only that, but throwing Kido, that wouldn't hold him at all. Pardon me. But the problem ultimately comes down to Ichibē's tactics and wisdom are just far exceed Shuhei's, we'll call it, carefulness. Shuhei's not a coward. It's like, are you afraid? I'm afraid. It's like, and those who aren't afraid are not of their own sword aren't worthy of holding. I'm like, that's what I was taught. And I appreciate, Shuhei is actually a really cool character, and he's the main focus of the Camp for Your Own World light novel, but yeah, there's a difference between being afraid of your own power and being respectful of your own power, understanding your own power. Because if you are afraid of your own power, then you are never going to be able to reach your full potential, because you're going to be too scared to try to achieve more than what you already have. Whereas if you are respectful, know your limitations, but know that you might be able to hurt someone, there is a difference between fear and respect. Having respect means, yes, I respect my sword, my power, but I also wary of what I can do if I'm not careful. Being wary is not the same thing as being afraid. So that whole model of being afraid of the sword, I'm sorry. I like Shuei's character, and to be fair, he got that from Tozen. But that is a very, I've never been a big fan of that philosophy, if I'm going to be honest. But no, if you factor Bankai to Ichibē, because Ichibē would not go Bankai unless he had to, unless he got ink on you. Factoring in Shuei's Bankai, unfortunately, Ichibē would probably counter that with Kido or whatever. Or honestly, just take the Bankai's name away. Like, again, hit it with his ink, takes the Bankai's name away. He can literally counter just about any Bankai or Zanpakuto there is. So now we got through the lieutenants. Let's get to the captains. Soifone. Soifone isn't even, I was about to say might, but she isn't even as fast as Ichibē, because she's not even as fast as Hirafuki. The other guy, Otetsu, that was the name of the sword guy. This is the guy who created him, but she wasn't even as fast as the Hot Springs Demon. Because she's the fastest among the fastest, probably the fastest, of the 13 Court Guard squad. But we're not talking the 13 Court Guard squad. We're talking about the Zero Division. So he is probably faster than her. Likewise, his spiritual pressure probably dwarfs hers, because it's said that the combined might of the Zero Division, all 5 of them, is greater than the Gotei 13. Now, granted, when that was said, the Gotei 13 was probably much different at that time, because now you're dealing with a group of individuals that still had Yamamoto, had Kenpachi, had Byakuya, had Shunsui, like prodigies of generations. So they might have still been strong, but I guess it's the question of how much stronger. Like individually, like some of the Gotei 13 probably could beat a giant chunk of the Zero Division. Like I'd argue Kenpachi might beat Otetsu in a fight in swordsmanship. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth. We just never saw a huge amount from the others besides Ichibē and a bit of Otetsu, and even less of, again, the Hot Spring Demon. I can't remember his full name. Point being, though, Soifone doesn't really measure up because, again, she tries to go in with Suzume Abachi. He'll notice it. He'll block it. He'll avoid it. His spiritual pressure is probably enough like Aizen's to kind of just counteract it. If she tries Shunko, he can just start hitting her, and she starts losing strength because he's taking away half her strength in certain areas. She tries to go Bankai, assuming that anything even works. He can just get out of the way. He can just throw the ink on it. Throwing the ink on it takes away most of its power. That'd actually be a cool scenario where she fires her Jakuho Raikoben at him, and the missile comes. He lands ink all over the missile and just takes its name away. And when it hits, it still makes it like that explosion, but it's just like, sorry, but we don't know. I don't know what Ichibei's voice actually sounds like yet. I know he does have a voice actor in Brave Souls, but I don't know if it's an English voice actor. But I almost want Gambuda. Sorry about that. I'm trying to think of what his voice probably could sound like. Sorry about that, young Soifone. But you see, taking the name away from anything, it takes away all its power, no matter how explosive the results still end up being. Now then, and he basically just wrecks her shop. So yeah, no, Soifone would not blast against Ichibē at all. Gin and Rose. Rose. Yeah, no, Rose. I was going to say a lot, but Rose, yeah. Rose is too cocky, as we saw with Mass Day Masculine. He could have won if he didn't just if he could have just kept his mouth shut, but nope. Ichibē, and Ichibē probably would be the kind of guy who'd take out his own eardrums. Or again, once the Bankai activate, he just throws ink on it, and there you go. Any Bankai or any Zanbato that has a physical manifestation that's large enough to be a threat, like a Sajin Komamura, who we'll get to, Jaco Raikoben, a giant missile, the dance troupe, that is prime target for Ichimonji's ability. So, unfortunately, those are terrible Bankai to go up against him. So, Rose will lose outright. Gin, I will say this, Gin is tricky. Gin is tricky because the speed of the Kamishini no Yari and the effect of Kamishini no Yari is one that could kill Ichibē. It is one. Like, if Ichibē wasn't careful and didn't keep his guard up, he could be caught off guard by that sword. As he says, it's not as fast as he claimed it out to be, but it's still clearly somewhere in that measurement of 500 times the speed of light and like some odd kilometers. Because he decapitated an entire city in an instant. It's clear it's fast as hell. If he does hit him with the poison, yes, Ichibē will die then. So Gin could. And when we're talking about these guys, obviously I still think Ichibē wins. But when we're talking about certain captains, there are certain scenarios where certain captains could theoretically pull a win off on Ichibē. It's just the likelihood of that is slim to none. And here it's slim to none because, again, Ichibē would see Shinso or Kamishini no Yari know what it is and possibly know what it does. And realize, I need to be careful with that one. And just block it with his blade, take half the name away. And then, go to town on Shinso. Gin. But again, there's a theoretical scenario where Gin could definitely win. Unohana. I think Unohana actually had a lot of respect from the Zero Division because it was it was a Zero Division member who actually taught her the medical skills that she now has or had. And again, I'll say this: she's also not dumb. She isn't dumb. Like because she is such a honed warrior, she would probably be able to sense. I need to be careful around this guy. And possibly go into Bankai from the get. And her Bankai being an acid means that, unlike with some of the other Bankais, except for the blade itself, Ichibē can't take the name away from. I mean, theoretically, he could throw the ink on the acid, I guess, and take away the name of the acid's name. It's no longer acid, but that it's still he'd have to do it before getting hit by the acid. Otherwise, he's going to have a freaking problem on his hands. Unohana is another one that, in the right context, could beat him. But again, wisdom, the knowing of the true name, probably knowing what it does. Again, Ichimonji's ability to take away the name of anything, and probably including like a non-solid like acid. You just get left with someone who Unohana might be able to beat, but ultimately probably couldn't. Shinji. Shinji is a weird one. I don't think he beats Ichimonji, because I think he's a similar case to Aizen where he'd be able to figure it out. Him, Aizen, Urahara, Mayuri, Kenpachi, they're all individuals who could figure out the trick and work around that. Or, already work around the trick. I mean, there's a lot of characters that do that, but just in terms of like pure instinct and all that stuff. But it would still probably throw Ichibē for a loop. I hate the fact that it's Ichibē and Ichimonji. Like, you keep going, but it's hard to keep us on track of what I'm talking about when I have to use both their names. Unfortunately for Shinji, he can't use his Bankai, so he's already behind in this fight. Ichibē is also just far wiser, more experienced, and like I said, could probably figure it out. He could also probably do a wide spray effect with his ink that would eventually hit Shinji, and Shinji's done. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but Shinji loses that fight. Byakuya is a unique case here. Byakuya is not one I think could beat Ichibē so much as give Ichibē a solid fight. And what I mean by that is, because of the nature of Byakuya, because he's so well-rounded, he could, in theory, keep up with Ichibē. Like, speed-wise, he can keep up with him because we know he's got a solid grasp of Shumpo. Or he's actually very masterful for Shumpo. He either rivals or is a little below Soifo in terms of his Shumpo capabilities. His Aikido capabilities are some of the best in the Soul Society. Apparently his hand-to-hand combat is also really good, but we never really see that aspect of him. And obviously his swordship skills are top-notch. But it's his Zanpakuto Zembozakura, and particularly Zembonzakura Kageyoshi, that I think would really give Ichibē a difficult time, because, yeah, he can spray the ink on to Zembozakura Kageyoshi, but there's only so many petals he can do that to. It's not going to take away the entire sword's name. He's just going to take away some of those blades' names. So Ichibē to beat Byakuya is probably actually not going to have to rely on Ichimonji so much as his other skills, including Kido, hand-to-hand, all that. So that being said, we've seen him have enough. There's one, I can't remember the name of it, but it's something like a giant dragon that did a giant gust of wind to blew things back. He can probably blow his flower petals away, his blades away, and then go in for, decisive strike. So it's debatable how that fight could go on. I don't see him winning, but he could definitely give a solid fight. Shunsui is definitely one who might be able to beat Ichibē as well. And that's because Shunsui is extremely tricky, untrusting, obviously. He's willing to fight dirty, which is very important. His Zanpakuto is one of the most versatile we've ever seen, which would definitely, and most of them don't involve striking, except for Ira Oni, the color demon, and the red light, green light stuff. He really doesn't have to get in close to deal any sort of damage to Ichibē. Now, should he get in close, he actually create clones of himself, which is impressive. Hide in shadows. If he goes in the Bankai, Ichibē is going to have a problem unless he can take away the name of his sword. Or or to cut the sword's name in half, which ultimately I think is what would happen. I do think because of that. The problem with most of these guys going up against Ichibē is their normal first stage strategy is to use their blade. But the minute those blades hit Ichimonji, they're going to be cut in half, and it's possible they won't be able to activate Shikai at all. So, and then at that point, they're screwed. So, yeah, it is really difficult to figure out how some of these guys are fair. I think Shunsui, though, would recognize the problem and possibly just go straight into Bankai. But we'll see. But it's debatable. Sajin would get his shit kicked by Sajin is such a sitting target with freaking Kakujo Tengen Myo. It's just such a huge ass target. It's not even funny, unfortunately. Actually, it's kind of funny. Besides that, though, he's too much of a brunt melee fighter. Like if he went into his even if he was in his like true perfect Bankai, like or his full power Bankai with Kakugo Tengen Myo Daigojo, or I can't remember what it was the name of it exactly. Basically, where the Bankai was indestructible, just like his body. Ichimonji completely counteracts that. So, yeah, unfortunately, it would not go well for him at all. Needless to say, Kensei does not fare well at all. He's too much of a close-range fighter. Honestly, his Shikai would probably be a bit more advantageous in this fight than his Bankai. Just because he can attack from a distance with that. But unfortunately, because of the way his Bankai works and because of the way his character is, no, he's going to want to try to get in there and, get in close, and that's going to just be detrimental to his health. Yeah. And then Tozen, I will say this. Tozen's a little trickier because of the way Emma Kurogi worked, but it's ultimately not something that's going to really impact Ichibē, because he can literally siphon off all the black there is. So that includes the void of nothing that stays in. Let's not also forget his Shikai's ability to just steal the black off of you and just eliminate you to the point where you'll never be reincarnated. So, yeah, let's not forget that little fact. Toshiro, in theory, if the battle went on long enough to get him to his adult form, he could beat he could beat Ichibē. He could. That's assuming the fight went on long enough. See, I actually had someone comment on Byakuya's video about how Byakuya is too high, how Hitsugai and Kenpachi clearly ranked above him because of the Gerald fight. But the problem is that, as I always explain it, I'm judging this as they go up against each other. So, and then counting number of wins versus losses. And in that case, Byakuya ranked higher, in my opinion. Toshiro, I think, would stand a little bit of a better shot. Again, there's like a theoretical scenario here where he could, in fact, beat Ichibē. He could completely annihilate him, as a matter of fact. But it's so astronomically low as to basically not be anything but next to impossible. Because it entails the fight lasting long enough for him to get there, and a fight with Ichibē would not last that long. Now, that being said, it is worth noting that the ink might actually freeze against Hyorimaru, or when we get to Rukia. So the name-taking ability of the ink might be counteracted in this case. But then again, he's still got his Kido. He can still steal all the black off him. It's just one of those things where he's not a good measure. Kenpachi Zaraki, my man, loses the Ichibē. Now, to be fair, Kenpachi, I think, stands a much better shot than a lot of other people do. And the reason for that is, even if you took Nozarashi's name away, Kenpachi has fought with a nameless sword for decades already. Like, just because you cut Nozarashi's name in half doesn't mean it's still not a sword. It still doesn't mean Kenpachi's power is still there. Because, I mean, yes, the sword is you. The sword is a reflection of you and the power that you hold. But at the same time, it's an extension of you, but you still have your own separate power as well. And Kenpachi has always been a real prime example of this fact, where, you know, if his own energy is still monstrous that most captains can compete. Like at this point in the series, he has the highest Ryatsu of any captain in Gotei 13, hands down. In fact, the only ones who probably beat him are probably are Aizen, definitely, and maybe Ichibē. And Ichibē, frankly, isn't even a guarantee at this point. Because when Kenpachi fought Yuwak, the Yuwak copy, but Yuwak, or Yuwatch, depending on your pronunciation, that was not Kenpachi fully realized. Kenpachi was the only captain to be placed on the 5 special war potentials list, and he didn't even have a Zanpakuto that like was fully functioning at that point. Same with Ichibē. Ichibē was the only other Shinigami from the, you know, in the Soul Society. Technically, the Soul King's Palace isn't in the Soul Society, but technically it is. Who was also placed on the list. They were both considered wartime potential. They were both considered seriously dangerous. And Ichibē isn't dumb. He would see the threat that Kenpachi posed. In fact, it's possible that if Kenpachi wanted to, he could cut Ichibē Amonji in half. In theory, he could do that. It's a matter of who gets the first strike in. Because if Ichibē strikes Nozarashi first, Nozarashi loses half its name, and then, you know, it's not looking good for Kenpachi in terms of using his full power. But if Kenpachi sees Ichibē as a worthy foe from the get, he might go full Nozarashi from the get, slice down and cut Ichimonji in half. So it's possible Kenpachi could beat. He stands a better shot than I think a lot of other characters. But the ultimate problem just comes from the fact that Ichibē still has so many other tricks on his sleeves from Kido. Even if the sword's cut in half, he could probably still take a name away, theoretically, or activate the frickin' mausoleum and then just rob all the black off of Kenpachi and kill him. So while Kenpachi would still very much lose to Ichibē, I think he stands a better shot than a lot of the other captains or a lot of other characters on this list. Mayuri Kuretsuchi. Now, Mayuri, I think, would actually be really interesting. He loses. But with prep time, in theory, I don't normally go with the prep time because we don't do the prep time with this. But let's assume that Mayuri actually had prep time. Let's say he develops a device that just could be, you know, is dangerous to Ichibē. And say, I will take this device's name away. Oh, that's very interesting, Ichibē Hyōsube. But there's one problem. I never named this device. It is a nameless creation I have created. So tell me, Ichibē Hyōsube, what do you do how do you take away of the name of something that was nameless to begin with? And I can see it. I think I do a pretty good Mayuri, impression-wise. So that would be one way I could see Mayuri getting a one-up on Ichibē. Unfortunately, he would still fail to beat him. Again, taking all the black off of, you see, I'm wearing completely all white, and he's wearing his, his German outfit. But that is where you're mistaken. Mistaken, Mayuri Kuretsuchi. Black exists on everything. Your clothes, your clones, your organs, your blood, your bones, your very soul. And, you know, he just sucks up and says, da! He just takes Mayuri away. Just kills him. But no, Mayuri is, again, kind of one of those individuals that, given enough prep time, could theoretically win. But it's a long shot. I give Kenpachi better odds than Mayuri, quite frankly. But again, I do see that scenario where it's like, I never named this device. So tell me, Ichibē Hyōsube, what will you do now? And then, of course, you get the fan favorite. My personal favorite character is Urahara. Kisuke Urahara. He's actually my profile pic, Facebook. Now, unfortunately, he does lose, but he's also a very careful guy, Urahara. So he does lose. But his Kido mastery is among the greatest. So he's at least competent to keep up with Ichibē and Kido. Speed-wise, we know he's fast because he was part of the squad too. Hand-to-hand, we know he's capable. He's a great swordsman. His Zanpakuto Benihime is versatile enough that he doesn't need to get in close quarters with Ichibē. In fact, he is probably smart enough to know he can't get in close quarter match with this guy. And then his portable gi guy can help him avoid getting hit with the ink a couple times. He could probably even dish out some damage. The ultimate problem is that I don't think he has the technique that could really take down Ichibē for good. Even throwing level 99 Kido at him is not a method of taking him down for good. The only way Urahara would be able to beat him is if he had planned something out for him like he did with Aizen. And seeing as we don't really go into this fight that way, he would have lost to Ichibē, unfortunately. This is actually the reason why he loses to Kenpachi as well, in my opinion, because he doesn't go into that fight with a plan to take on Kenpachi. Because the fights have to be kind of on a neutral field. Without that, I actually think he loses to Kenpachi. Without it, I mean, with prudent planning, Urahara could beat literally anyone. Or nearly anyone. Anyway, so that's Urahara. Now we get to the last one. The big one we need to talk about while my battery's life is still there. Yeah, head captain, or former head captain, Genryusai Yamamoto. Why does Genryusai get the honor of being the strongest and being the only guy who's able to beat Ichibē? I think it comes from several things. One, by his own admission, he said there's never been a Shinigami born stronger than him. And by that admission, he's theoretically stronger than Ichibē, who theoretically is probably as old, if not older, than Yamamoto, now that I think about it, and yet he looks far younger. But I think it's more down to the point of their actual abilities. And that is, when they actually go into combat, Yamamoto is quick to activate his Zanpakuto Toe, which means he already has Ryujin Jakat's Flames out, which means he could probably take out any of the ink that gets active or thrown at him. So he's pretty much avoiding the ink at that point. Speed-wise, they're all probably equal to each other. Strength-wise, they're probably equal to each other. Swordsmanship-wise, they're probably equal to each other. Kido-wise, they're probably comparable. But again, Ichibē probably knows a few more Kido than Yamamoto. It really comes down to who's going to win long-term. Now, if Ichibē activates the Mausoleum, that would theoretically kill Yamamoto. But because Ichibē was one of those guys who also explains technique, Yamamoto simply just, comes in close, activates Bankai, and then Zaka no Tachi, and then just incinerates the entirety of the scenario right there. So, both these guys aren't stupid. They're wise beyond their years. They're masters of war. They're masters of the battlefield, tacticians, all that. I think Yamamoto's pure destructive capabilities do overwhelm Ichibē's more metaphysical capabilities, symbolic abilities. But I do ultimately think it is Yamamoto that takes the win in this case. But that's just my thoughts. We will talk about Yamamoto until next week, and that'll be the end of this series. Until they bring out more information about characters who we don't have information of, like Ukitake, like Love, like Ishin, those characters. Until then, that's the end of this. But don't worry, there will be other videos, Bleach-based videos. Don't worry, I got plenty of them lined up, so don't worry about that. Until then, though, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you folks on the flip side next time.